Hello friends, and welcome to my channel if you're new, or welcome back if you're back. If you are new, hi, my name's Rabbit and my pronouns are they, them, and if you're back, welcome back. Either way, I really appreciate you being here. This video is very exciting for me today. It is jam-packed with all sorts of exciting autumn activities. In this vlog, we're gonna be building a fort to watch movies in, having a nice picnic in the park to read spooky comic books, doing a ton of baking and cooking, exploring a bunch of Halloween decorations that are set up in the town around where I live. I'm doing some spooky autumnal crafts, and as usual, watching a lot of spooky content of my own. Basically, I'm just super excited about today's video, so if that sounds like something you're interested in and want to come along for the ride, then please keep on watching. So we're starting this vlog, as usual, with a little bit of baking. This is one of the recipes that I make every Samhain and every kind of Halloween season. They are these delicious almond cookies that I like to make in the shape of crescent moons. They're really tasty and also really good for like ritual purposes. I'll link the recipe below as always, but it's just one of my and Cage's favorite treats. Almond flour is a little bit expensive, so it tends to be kind of a special occasion food, which is why autumn is one of my favorite times to get to make it. I find that the dough is easiest to work in your hands as it's kind of dry at first, and to shape it into crescents, I usually just roll it between my palms until I get a sort of noodle and then shape it into the moon shape that I want. You could also just make them round cookies like the traditional way, and then they could be like full moons. I bake them in the oven until they're deliciously browned and just a little bit crispy on the bottom. And when they've cooled down enough, I can sprinkle them with powdered sugar and arrange them on this beautiful plate. They are one of my absolute favorite treats, and this recipe makes so many. I store a lot of them away in this cookie jar, but some of them I am packing up for a little trip that I am about to go on. The day we went out, it was the most perfect sunny autumn weather. There were so many leaves in the ground, and it just felt incredible to be able to play with them, kick them up. All the smells, as I've talked about before, are just absolutely intoxicating during the autumn. The park we went to had these incredibly enormous trees, and Cage was able to climb in them. We wandered around quite a bit in this massive park until we found a nice cozy spot that we could sit in that was nice and quiet. It was right next to this little creek, so we could like kind of hear the brook babbling in the background, and it honestly felt like we were in a storybook. The sun was just like softly streaming down. I don't think we could have picked a better day or time to come visit this lovely place. As usual, we set out our picnic blankets. We had some apple cider that I had brought from home, fresh baked cookies, and some of my favorite nostalgic spooky books. Cage is a tattoo artist and had a lot of drawing to do that day, so while I hung out and read, he was able to just listen to some music and prep for his week of work. One of the first items that I read was my Archie comics from when I was a kid. They're so nostalgic for me, and I had quite a collection when I was a youngin' of Archie comics. However, the only few issues that I ended up keeping from my childhood are the Halloween issues, go figure. They are some of the best issues in my opinion, and I was feeling nostalgic this year and had purchased a new Archie comic, like the Halloween edition of this year, and honestly it wasn't as good as the old ones. I could have probably just saved my money, but I was really happy to be able to have my old ones to look back on. I was completely enamored with the spot that we had found to hang out in. It was kind of in the middle of all these trees. There was a little brook babbling to the left with all these leaves that were just falling on the ground and all around us. The slight breeze was absolutely incredible, and occasionally people would like walk by on the path way up ahead, and it was just wonderful to see the bustling conversation and feel like we were all, you know, experiencing this lovely day together. One of my other new favorite comics that I only found either this year or last year is the Monster High comic books. If you're on Monster High Tumblr, you've probably seen a lot of people with profile pictures of this art from the comic books. If you didn't know where it was from before, now you know. It's ridiculously adorable, and I have 2 of these comic books. They're both really delightful. Monster High just feels like one of the perfect spooky things to get into the Halloween mood to read. And the last comic, or I guess it's more of a manga, but like a very American manga, that I brought with me was Vampire Kisses. I've made a video about how much I love this series before, but yes, one of my favorite things to read year-round, but especially around Halloween time. Raven is one of my favorite characters, has been since I read about her when I was like 13. It was like, this is who I want to be. I find that a lot of people that I watch on YouTube who make autumn content talk about how much they love reading during this season, and I also love reading, but one of my favorite things to read that makes me feel so nostalgic is comic books. So it just felt like an absolutely perfect idea for the day to just pack up a bunch of my favorite spooky comics into a tote bag, bring some cookies, my favorite drink, and just have some quality time in the sunshine with Cage, getting to read and have him work on his projects while I hung out. There's something just ridiculously nostalgic about these series for me. It felt really special to spend a day with some of my favorite characters in the park. Usually for books this season, Cage and I have been listening to audiobooks together, mostly Neil Gaiman ones, but it was wonderful to spend some time with a physical book. A little treat of this season was Cage and I got to go down to his mom's house for a lovely autumn supper. We got to eat outside with all these fairy lights and the stars, but the best part about it was that his mom sets out this massive spooky town every year. It has all these tiny animatronics. I usually have only seen these like at Michael's, but every year I get to go to his mom's house and see her giant spooky town. It makes me really, really happy. It's an enormous collection. There's like 2 whole floors of the house. Yeah, it's wild. I didn't get a clip of all of it, but I think it's really, really incredible. Though we'd been really lucky with the incredible weather so far this season, one thing about living in Canada is that it tends to snow in October, which makes me quite sad, but it does offer the perfect opportunity to warm up with some delicious and cozy soup, which I had made and put into our spooky cat mugs. It was like a vegan Irish stew situation, and it was my first time making the recipe, but I'll link it below. Either way, one of my favorite traditions for Halloween every year is to walk around and look at the Halloween decorations that people put up around the city. So Cage and I went on a delightful walk, and despite the fact that there was snow everywhere, it was still incredibly wonderful and spooky. There are some beautiful, absolutely incredibly creative setups and some just corny, cheesy ones, and I love every single one and everything in between. One of my favorite ones that I saw was these very spooky kind of pumpkin dolls. I don't know what you would call them, but I think they had like little baby doll hands and little pumpkin heads, and I just thought that they looked incredible, like a spookier version of Over the Garden Wall or something. I saw a lot of skeletons out, which always make me smile, and tons of pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns. There were loads of spider webs, one of my favorite things for decorating, but I'm worried about them because I think that they're like maybe not so good for the birds. One of the alternatives that I saw to the spider webs were people like making giant spider webs out of string, yarn, something like that, and it looked absolutely incredible. I think next year I'm going to try to decorate my outdoors, and I would like to do a DIY yarn spider web or something like that. Very, very cool. There were quite a lot of blow-up figures, which are quite a lot of fun. They feel quite cheesy and spooky, but I'm excited to walk around at night and get to see them all blown up and lit up, hopefully. And another one of my favorite and inexpensive Halloween decorations is just bags of leaves that are orange and have jack-o'-lantern faces on them. It makes me so happy, and I'm honestly thrilled that these garbage bags exist. I should use them year-round. That would be like aesthetic-y goals. One thing that's nice about the snow is some people do make use of it, like these lovely people that made a little coffin graveyard. Very, very cool. And I love to see all the different graveyards, especially the DIY ones with all the puns. Stew was a delightful addition to see, and there were these really cool garbage bag witches. I don't know what they were made out of, but I like them a lot. Again, you can't go wrong with like cartoony, adorable decorations, but I also saw some lovely, almost vintagey looking things, like this house that had put up corn stalks and old pumpkins. This mannequin with a jack-o'-lantern head was delightful, and I love to see little dioramas like all these rats and crows sharing a heart. It's one of my absolutely favorite things to do, to be able to just walk around the city with Cage and get to look at the decorations, get inspiration for next year and stuff, because we've never really decorated our house for Halloween. Even with the snow in the ground, there were a lot of really wonderful leaves that we were able to see, and that made me happy. Something about all the leaves on the ground surrounded by the jack-o'-lanterns and the Halloween decorations makes my heart absolutely sing, and it makes me feel so happy. This season feels like nothing else in the world. And while we were on our walk, I was talking to Cage about like how wonderful it would be if everyone just decorated for Halloween all year, but I guess it would maybe lose some of its specialness if that was the case. I mean, I decorate my house for Halloween all year. There's something so cool about getting to take walks and see more and more Halloween decorations spring up in the month. It's like this lovely surprise, and you just get so much inspiration and feel so much joy seeing the Halloween cheer spread all around. I don't know. It just makes me really, really happy and really, really excited to one day decorate the outside of my house as well as the inside. But we will see when that happens. We walked around this really lovely part of the city that just has all these almost like vintagey style houses. Everything looks so quaint and fancy. I really like it. Coming in from the cold, we thought what better way to warm up and have a cozy night in after it had snowed, and I was like feeling all sad about the winter coming and autumn being over, which it's not. It's always autumn in my heart. I figured what better way to celebrate and continue the autumn cheer than to build a pillow fort to watch some spooky movies in. So I'm setting up in the craft room. I took out the light bulbs that were originally in the room and replaced them with orange light bulbs. I think it looks really, really cool in person, but unfortunately, once I'm actually filming in the room, the camera is overcorrecting and you can't see the fact that it's like lovely and orange and all warm and cozy, glowy looking in there. Either way, I'm starting out by laying a lovely comfy base for the pillow fort. I'm using this handmade quilt that Cage's mom made us. It's super huge and made with a lot of love and talent, so I figured it would be a lovely base for everything. I'm using a chair in the dining room as a bit of support, and of course in the background I have one of my favorite nostalgic spooky things, which I have watched over and over this season, probably 4 or 5 times now, Over the Garden Wall. Yeah, people who watch it every October, you guys, you know how it is. And just stacking pretty much every blanket that I can find in the house onto the floor of the craft room, so we were able to have the comfiest, coziest nest possible. To make it look a bit more spooky and dark, I'm using some black lace scarves and shawls and just like random pieces of spiderweb fabric and curtains and whatever to make it a little more dark and spooky looking. And then what kind of pillow fort would we have if we didn't have the company of our beloved Halloween stuffed animals? So I'm bringing all of them out to join the party, watch the horror movies with us. Of course a fort needs a ceiling. I'm using a duvet cover and placing it over the chair. I thought that these pumpkins would be decoration on the outside of the fort, but I needed something to hold the duvet cover down, and pumpkins seem to be working. Maybe don't do this at home. This might not be the safest way to do this, but it worked for us. No injuries were had, and I think it honestly looks really cute, like a little pumpkin castle with the pumpkins holding the fort ceiling down in place. Honestly, I'm obsessed. And it was time to set up the lighting inside, so I have the string of battery-operated fairy lights that I am placing all around the perimeter. When they turn on, they just have this lovely twinkly glow, and I'm taking a bunch of battery-operated candles and setting those out. It would be super cool to have real candles, but I would definitely burn my house down, so battery-operated flameless candles it is. Honestly, I used to be opposed to these, but they've been a really, really great addition to Halloween season. I also have this pumpkin light from the thrift store, which I love, and I found these vegan pumpkin flavored marshmallows from my favorite vegan marshmallow brand at the grocery store, and I am so excited for them. So they are going to be one of the treats that we are having. They're going in this little vintage cat bucket that I found at the thrift store. And that is the Halloween fort set up. So this is what it looks like. We've got our lovely candles. I set out a bunch of tiny pumpkins and the twinkly lights combined with like the super fluffy blankets and all our favorite Halloween stuffies just make for my favorite atmosphere ever. this fort is an upgrade from last year's. Even though I did really enjoy last year's as well, I was really, really excited about the outcome of this year's fort. But what would a Halloween movie night be without some spooky snacks? So it was time to get started on those. So first on the menu, I'm trying for the first time to make this olive hummus. I've never tried this recipe before. I'll link it below if you're interested. It turned out pretty good, but quite salty. Really, really enjoyable though. I am chopping up some olives and some bread to basically dehydrate in the oven. Once they have cooked for long enough that there's not too much liquid in them, I'm gonna pulse them in my blender until they resemble a sort of graveyard dirt. Now to make the hummus, I'm taking a can of chickpeas and straining all the liquid out, putting those chickpeas into my blender, adding in some olives, lemon juice, salt, garlic, pepper, and cumin. Once everything is in there, we are blending it up until it is a nice, smooth, hummusy paste. While I was making everything, I was going through nostalgic spooky movies. I watched Corpse Bride, Hocus Pocus. It was a really solid time. Next, it's time to make the tombstones and headstones. So I am taking some pita, cutting it in half, and then just using some clean kitchen scissors to cut out little gravestone looking things. Once I've cut up all the pita, I just stick it in the oven at a pretty low temperature until it is hard and cracker textured. Now I have all my ingredients ready and it's time to assemble everything. I have these really cute little coffin-shaped dishes that I found at Michael's this year when they were having a buy one get one sale. We're starting by spooning our hummus down in the bottom. Then I am sprinkling some of that graveyard dirt on top. I guess this recipe was probably intended to be made in like a larger, wider pot, but I thought having like two little personal chip dishes would be handy since we were a little bit crammed in the fort area. Once the grave soil is down, I can take my cooked pitas and stick them down into the graveyard. I think it's looking really cute. I'd also picked up a random bunch of herbs from the grocery store that day. It was like a poultry mix, I believe, but I thought that the rosemary worked really well as like a little bush, and the thyme worked really well as like a little spooky tree. And with all of my extra chips that didn't fit in the graveyard, I just put them in this amazing spooky cat container that I got for Halloween last year. Ignore me looking like I am waterboarding it with chips. And it was the perfect container for the excess of spooky chips. This is what our little graveyard hummus looks like. It is so tasty, so delicious. I love making spooky vegan food, and this was an absolute treat. Definitely will be making it again, but maybe with less olives or less salt, because yes, very tasty, but a little much for me. Any Halloween fort is not complete with also some sweeties, so I am making some of Cajun Eye's other favorite cookies. These are a vegan take on Rocky Roads. Instead of white chocolate chips, I use vegan marshmallows, and I also have like almonds that I've chopped up and tiny vegan chocolate chips. They make the most delicious chocolatey cookies, absolutely magical, but I wanted to make them a little bit extra spooky, and I had seen someone make these little ghost cookies where they dipped marshmallows in white chocolate and drew little ghost faces on them. I don't really like white chocolate, and I couldn't find any vegan versions, so once the cookies were almost done baking, I took some vegan marshmallows and stuck them in the top of some of the cookies. I just did a couple because I wanted to do the experiment, and then I stuck them back in the oven for a couple minutes. While they were finishing cooking, I melted a teeny tiny bit of vegan chocolate chips and put them into a plastic bag. And once the cookies had cooled down, I used my little icing bag to draw little chocolate ghost faces on the cookies. I think they look really cute, and they kind of look like square ghosts. They probably would have worked better if I used the white chocolate, but I think they're adorable, and even though Cage thought they were Pokemons at first, that was not the intention, and I think they look cute regardless. So that was the snacks for the evening, but we needed some beverages to go with everything, of course, as well. Cage prefers cold drinks, but I prefer hot drinks. I wanted to experiment, so I made 2 cold drinks and 2 hot drinks. So starting with our cold beverage, I wanted to do one of those like fancy sugar rims. So I'm taking some sugar and cinnamon and putting it in a bowl that I will soon find out is too small. And then I am taking some maple syrup and vegan caramel syrup and putting it on this plate. These are some really fun martini glasses that I found at Home Goods this year. I think they're absolutely incredible. They have like sort of a bird claw clutching the bottom, and I think they're incredible. So I am dipping the rim first in the caramel sauce and then into the sugar, so they have like this cool crystallized effect. Then I'm using the rest of the syrup that is left on the plate to sweeten up the drink, so just sticking that in there. I'm grabbing an orange and slicing it in half, so we got like that little tropical drinky looking thing, but I'm using a little pumpkin toothpick that I found at the dollar store to decorate our drinks a little festively. Since I already had the orange out, I figured I'd cut some extra slices for our hot apple cider. And then it was time to put a cinnamon stick in each of the 4 cups. I didn't have any leftover cider, so I'm just using some regular apple juice from the store as the base of everything. And for the cold drinks, I have these silicone molds that are shaped like pumpkins and bats. I found them at the dollar store years ago, and they're perfect for making spooky little ice cubes. So both of the beverages get some little pumpkins and some little bat ice cubes. Cage isn't really a fan of the taste of alcohol, so I'm putting some caramel apple rum in mine, but just some extra apple juice in his because he didn't want any. So those are our spooky cold drinks. Very, very delicious. I enjoyed mine quite a lot, and I think Cage liked his too. And then for the hot apple cider, once all the ingredients are in, I'm just sticking it in the microwave until it's nice and hot. It takes just a couple of minutes. I could have probably done it over the stove, but I was feeling lazy. And we still had a couple of our almond cookies left, so I'm sticking them in a nice little bowl and repowdering them with sugar, and we have those as a little extra snack. Tuna's cozy in her cat tree, and now that all the ingredients are ready for our lovely night, it was time to get into the fort. So I'm lighting this candy corn candle and setting it far, far away from the fort so we are at no risk of burning anything down. We brought all of our food into the craft room and had all of our spooky snacks and drinks ready to go. It was so, so cute. Also, one of the most exciting things that I never thought I'd be into, but I am obsessed with, is I found matching pajamas for me and Cage, but they're glow-in-the-dark skeleton pajamas, and they're super soft. So we got into our matching jammies and got into our cozy blanket and just got to snuggle up in the fort, and it was absolutely perfect. The first thing we watched was Ginger Snaps. Cage hadn't seen it before, and if you haven't seen it, it's really good. It's from the 90s, and it's a Canadian werewolf movie. Has kind of Jennifer's Body vibes. Once we were done with Ginger Snaps, which we both thoroughly enjoyed, we wanted to go back to a classic, and it was Over the Garden Wall again. One of Cage and I's favorites, but it was really wonderful to watch it in the fort while having all of our spooky drinks and treats. Autumn always feels like it has some of the most creative energy in the air, and in this season I'm always just very inspired to create new things. I had found this little ceramic candle holder at the thrift store ages ago, and it has all these little brown cats, but they kind of look like little werewolves or something to me, which is fine, but not super my vibe. And pretty much anytime I find some little cute ceramic cats that aren't really my vibe, my go-to is to repaint them to look like my cats. So that's what I'm doing today. I have my tea and my spooky little cup with some of my favorite snack crackers in it. They're these like star-shaped ones from Made Good. Oh, I'm obsessed with them. Anyway, I'm taking some acrylic paints and just spending a lovely evening repainting this little spooky piece to be an extra spooky piece with a special meaning to us because it has lemon and tuna on it. And since there was a third cat, I figured I'd just make another tuxie. So this will be maybe our future cat, the mystery cat of one day. Anyway, this is what it turned out looking like, and it was just a really lovely way to spend an afternoon in the autumn. Repainting things to be a little more Halloween-y or spooky is one of my favorite things, and this one was really easy because I only repainted the cats and the grass a little bit. One of my other repaint projects for this year was this purple kind of chicken foot candle holder that I had found. I don't know why the original creator would have made it like black and purple. I really didn't like it. Anyway, I had found it at HomeSense, and it just needed to have the glitter scraped off of it and a coat of silver paint on it, and it was absolutely perfect. A spooky craft that was my first time doing this year was trying to make a kind of candle. I say kind of candle because it's really just a wax mold. I didn't want to put the wick in it. Cage had found this candle making kit at the thrift store, and it came with just some wax that you could melt down and a silicone skull mold. I wanted to try using a little bit of sparkle in the inside of it, so I'm using some pearlescent powder from doll making to dust the inside so we get like a little bit of a holographic sheen. And once the wax is all melted, I can empty it into the skull mold, leave it for like 10 hours, and then unmold it. I ended up with 2 really cool skull-shaped candle things, and the bonus part is that I didn't use up all the wax, so with the extra wax I was able to drip it all over my newly spooky silver candle holder. So as you can see, it has this kind of vintage feel to it with all the wax dripping all over it. That was the goal anyway. Since I had found this black cat pasta, I'd been wanting to make it. It's super exciting. Basically just pasta, but in the shape of little cat paws and little scaredy cats and little cat faces. It was ridiculously exciting for me to make. The perfect easy dinner for a spooky night in. One of my favorite types of pasta is with garlic and olive oil and chili peppers. It's super, super tasty, and having it be black cat shaped just made it all the better. There's nothing better about the season than carving pumpkins. It's just the perfect spooky autumnal activity. There's nothing that gets me in a better mood, and it's perfect because not only do you get a wonderful decoration out of it, you get delicious snacks and or kind of magical ingredients because the pumpkin seeds are so delicious and so powerful. Earlier in the day, I had put on a simmer pot of orange slices and cinnamon sticks and an apple, so the entire house just smelled like the most incredible, warm, spicy deliciousness. I think one of the reasons that apple smells are so nostalgic for me is because my parents used to make their own applesauce in the morning sometimes when I was growing up, and walking into the kitchen with like that warm apple in the air is just a really cozy feeling for me. Got all their pumpkin carving tools out and this plastic tablecloth that I found at the dollar store, which feels extra spooky because it has like little witch hats and little bats on it and stuff. We put on one of our favorite spooky shows, and it was off. I don't know about you, if you're like kind of the plan it out or just go straight into it. Last year I had used a stencil, but I figured this year I would try one of my own creations. And honestly, it doesn't matter how it turns out. All that matters about this process is that you have fun. But it's always exciting to have the end result, the fruit of your labors, to be able to look at. Mostly, I was just excited to have a really quiet, quality time evening in with Cage, with our spooky drinks, the spooky smells, and the ability to make delicious pumpkin seeds to snack on for the rest of the season. I think Cage's pumpkin turned out super cute. It reminds me of like an Over the Garden Wall character or something. Mine, I like well enough. I think maybe the design that I chose would have worked better as like a painting on the pumpkin or something, because I think I kind of liked it better when it was drawn on versus when it was like hollowed out and lit up. So something to note for me for next year. Either way, one of the best things about our pumpkin carvings that I didn't realize until we had set them up is that we had actually kind of made the pumpkins have their eyes looking in separate directions, so we could display them in a way that it looks like they're like looking at each other and smiling, which just makes me really happy. I think it's absolutely adorable. I'm excited to have these lit up for as long as I can, keep them out on the porch as long as I can, but we shall see. I think it had been a really long time since Cage had watched Sleepy Hollow. I tend to watch it like around every Halloween, and it's always a fun one to revisit. Very spooky, and the setting is always very fun to watch. Once we were finished carving the pumpkins, it was time to make the pumpkin seeds. So I separated them out in 3 little separate quantities because I wanted to try 3 different recipes. I'll link them online below as usual. I ended up making the pizza flavor, ranch flavor, and the dill pickle flavor. Basically, once you've washed the pumpkin seeds and dried them out, you just put a little bit of olive oil on them and your desired spices, and then you stick them in the oven, rotating them every like 10 minutes or so to make sure that they are browning and crisping evenly. It ends up making such a tasty snack. While I made the pumpkin seeds, I got to watch Scary Godmother, which I hadn't seen before, but it's a super fun, spooky watch. The animation is kind of atrocious, but the background is delightful. I really like the background art. The CGI is awful though. You can find it for free on YouTube if you're interested. Anyway, this was the result of the pumpkin seed snack. They're all super good, but I think if I had to pick a favorite, the dill pickle one wins, but the pizza was a close second. If you can't already tell from this vlog, one of my favorite ingredients to cook with is chocolate. Really cozy for this season, and one of the things that I wanted to make was some delicious spiderweb chocolatey brownies. I've made this brownie recipe before and it's always been delicious, but I'd never tried doing it with this spiderweb pattern. It's this really dense, chewy, soft brownie with like the perfect crispy top, and I absolutely adore it. Normally I don't like frosting on brownies or really in general, but I figured I really wanted this spiderweb pattern, so we were gonna persevere, we were gonna try to do it, if nothing but for the aesthetic. And honestly, I don't know how well it turned out. Maybe try a different way next time. But to begin, I am melting down some chocolate chips and spreading those over top. I put a little bit of vegan whipping cream in there to kind of thin it out, but I don't know if that helped or what. And then I'm taking some icing sugar that has a little bit of vegan whipping cream in it, just enough to make it a little bit white, and putting it in a little plastic Ziploc bag that I've cut the tip off of that I can use as like a little frosting piping situation. So I'm just going around the entire brownie in like a swirl, and at first I was like, yes, this color looks good, but as it sat, it just got more and more opaque looking. Anyway, once it's all on there, you use a toothpick to kind of make the spider web incisions, and when I had taken a picture of it, it looks not great. After you put it in the fridge, it does get a little bit harder, but I had put plastic wrap on top of it, so because I had just given up and figured it would look bad, so it did not, so I couldn't really take a picture of it afterwards. Either way, this is how it turned out, and I think if you do it and just have faith and let it harden normally, it will probably look good and look really cool and spiderwebby, but today was not the day for that. Either way, it tasted delicious, and that's all that matters when it comes to baked goods. So it gets a thumbs up from me and Cage. Thank you so much for sticking through and watching till the end of this vlog. It means so much to me. I hope that your Halloween season is going absolutely wonderful, and I'm wishing you all the spooky delights of your dreams. That's all I got for today, and I hope you have a good one. Bye for now.